This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, July the 19th, 1980, the games of the 22nd Summer Olympiad would happen. And it would be in Moscow. Of course, we all know about this whole boycott thing and all that. How bad was it? Really bad. So there were a lot of historical moments when this Olympics started from July 19th to August the 3rd. It was the first Olympics in an Eastern Bloc country, the first Olympic Games and the only Summer Olympics to be held in a Slavic language speaking country. They were actually the only Summer Olympics in a self proclaimed communist country until China hosted the 2008 Summer Olympics. This would be the last time that the Baron Killarran from Ireland would be the IOC president before being succeeded by Juan Antonio Samaranch. Anyway, 80 nations came to the Moscow Games, the smallest since 1956. It would have been a lot more, but 66 countries boycotted the Games entirely because of the Soviet-Afghan War. There were alternate events outside the Soviet Union and all that. There were some athletes from the boycotting countries actually participated under the Olympic flag. The Soviets would actually boycott the 1984 Summer Games in Los Angeles. No major surprise that the Soviets and East Germany were the top countries in the medal standings because of their Eastern European supremacy and with no America around. In 1974, they had to choose between Moscow and Los Angeles for the 1980 Summer Olympics. By a score of 39-20, Moscow was named the Summer Olympics champion. Los Angeles would get the Summer Olympics in 1984, so at least they got a bit of a reprieve and all that. So yeah, of the 80 countries, 7 Olympic communities would make their first appearance at the Games. Angola, Botswana, Cyprus, Jordan, Laos, Mozambique, and Seychelles. But no medals among them. So anyway, there were a lot of problems with boycotts and all that. Especially with the fact that 29 countries would boycott the 76 Olympics in Montreal in protest against the IOC not expelling New Zealand because they had a rugby tour of apartheid South Africa. Basically, what South Africa did was get rid of farmland for black African farmers and give it to rich white people. So anyway, in 1979, the Soviet-Afghan War would take center stage and all that. Jimmy Carter would issue an ultimatum on January 20th, 1980, saying that if the Soviets did not pull out of Afghanistan, the U.S. would boycott the Moscow Olympics and all that. So, anyway, it was huge and all that. It was too late to ban the Soviets from the Winter Olympics in Lake Placid in 1980. But it was not too late to try to put the pressure on Russia to get out of Afghanistan. Of course, when I think of the Russian-Afghanistan war, I'm thinking about Rambo and the fact that the Afghans were the good guys in that one Rambo movie, but we all know what happened later on. Regardless of that, 65 countries would follow the U.S.'s lead. There were some countries like Canada that basically were afraid of bumping heads with the Americans and all that for many reasons and all that. So they decided not to do it. Great Britain actually allowed athletes to go to the Olympics to represent them, as the great Sebastian Coe and Steve Ovett, who were big rivals in cross country racing would actually go to the Olympics and win gold in 1980. There were some that said economically they couldn't participate. Iran actually boycotted because the Islamic Conference condemned the invasion, which was against their law. Because like they condemned an invasion, you can't do that. So Iran was hostile to both superpowers, which was weird. Iran actually was a terrible country, but yet they didn't support the Russians like some people would have expected. Both China and Taiwan would not participate in the games either. So they would participate in what they call the Olympic Boycott Games / Liberty Bell Classic in Philadelphia. So the strange thing was at the Summer Olympics in Montreal in 1976, 71% of the gold medals were won by countries that competed, but of course that was due to the doping programs in the Eastern Bloc countries. As a form of protest against the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan, 15 countries would march in the Olympic ceremony with the Olympic flame instead of their national flags. And of course, they would use the Olympic flag and hymn when those countries won. New Zealand, Portugal, and Spain did compete under the flags of their respective NOCs. Anyway, the boycott actually impacted the competitiveness of swimming, track and field, boxing, basketball, diving, field hockey, and equestrian sports. There were 36 countries winning at least one Olympic medal, but the Soviets and East Germany were practically the leaders and all. There were 203 events in this Olympics and all that. Anyway, there were no athletes caught doping, but then there would be a lot of things with testosterone and blood doping and all that. So anyway, so anyway, there were a lot of people that this NBC was going to be broadcast in the 1980 Olympics, but because of this whole thing with the boycott, they canceled its coverage. They would still air highlights and recaps of the games on a regular basis. ABC wanted to have a nightly highlight show, but because of NBC with the coverage of the 1980 Olympics, they balked. CBC almost took everything off the table, but they had a chance. Anyway, the games would attract 5 million spectators and all that. So anyway, the budget was huge and all that. There'd be a cost overrun, all that with the infrastructure. There were some highlights of the 1980 Olympics, despite the fact that the Americans and other countries couldn't do it. The U.S. archery team was actually one of the strongest ever fielded, but couldn't compete because of the boycott. So that was just huge and all that. In athletics, Meritus Yifter of Ethiopia won the 5,000 and 10,000 meters, which was amazing. Now, Yifter's path was actually huge because in 1972, he was expected to try for the 5,000, 10,000 meter double. But unfortunately, he had mistaken a time constraint. So he screwed up with his timing. And Ethiopia thought that he was trying to defect and all that, basically put him in prison. Anyway, Oved Cole would have, as I said prior, Earlier in the video, I said it's a great rivalry for Britain and all that. So Ovet won the 800 meters, and Ovet said he would crush Coe in the 1500 meters. Unfortunately, though, Coe won. Alan Wells from Scotland won the 100-meter dash, becoming the first Briton since 1924 to do so. So there was a lot of things going on and all that. So anyway. Anyway, basketball was hit. There were 5 men's teams that had to withdraw because of the Olympic boycott. The Soviets won gold in the women's competition, beating Bulgaria, with Yugoslavia taking bronze. Yugoslavia shocked a lot of people by winning the men's basketball championships over Italy, with the Russians taking third, which was weird. However, basketball wasn't here. But boxing was huge, as Teofilo Stevenson of Cuba became the first boxer to win 3 consecutive Olympic titles in heavyweight, having Cuba's boxing be huge and all that. So there were a lot of things happening there. Swimming was badly affected. Because the Americans didn't compete, the 1980 Summer Olympics closing ceremony had to be changed because there was supposed to be the flag. They would raise the flag of the next country to host the Olympics, which would have been the U.S. flag, but the flag of the city of Los Angeles was there and all that. So that was just a huge thing. So the medal count was huge, as the Soviets would put up 195 medals for first, East Germany second with 126, Bulgaria took third with 41 medals. Great Britain, who had a semi-boycott, had 21 medals, the most by a country doing all that. So 80 countries, and of course, let's not forget that the Soviets would boycott the 84 Olympics in Los Angeles, giving U.S. athletes way more gold medals than they can count, even more than the Soviets in 1980. But of course, there were new events too. But yeah, boycotts aren't good. And it did hurt the Olympic spirit, saying that boycotts are not good and all that. It ruins the Olympic spirit. It does. But for one fleeting moment, the Soviets said they could take pride over the Americans, even though it was a little tainted. And unfortunately for Jimmy Carter, this was one of the main reasons why he was not reelected to office in November 1980, that Reagan was the president, mostly due to his malaise stuff that The Simpsons once mocked, and a few other bad policies Carter did. This Olympic boycott was just practically the last straw, as it seemed. But it is what it is. Anyway, I'm going to do